Filet Mignon. My second favorite cut of steak, of course my first being missed steaks because I make a lot of them on this show. And missed steaks is usually why people shy away from this delicious delicacy, because after all, you're paying a hefty price tag for this small cut of meat. But do not be intimidated by price tags. After all, cars are expensive and people still drive like assholes. And today on Poor Choices, we are going to be sous videing our filet mignon, pretty much eliminating any chance of errors. I mean, you gotta really try to mess this thing up. And we'll make a little béarnaise sauce to go on top of it, because why not? Plus, some of you are receiving sous vide machines for the first time as part of either your white Santas, or your pink elephants, or your blue bears, or whatever the new game is for the holidays. So why not put it to use on one of the best pieces of protein you can possibly put in a bag in boiling water? All right, starting out, I have got an 8-ounce filet mignon. I'm gonna start saying it right so I don't piss off you fancy purists out there. And this process is gonna be really, really easy. I've got my sous vide over here heating up. I've got the water set to 130. And for those of you who have never sous vide before, let me explain it. Pretty much you set the temperature of the water to a precise one, here being 130 degrees, and that's going to be the doneness of whatever protein that you put in there. So if you're doing chicken, you can set it to 160, 165, or 175 if you're doing dark meat. You can do it for salmon, you can do it for a couple of things. And the idea is that you can't overcook anything that you put in the water because it will never get hotter than the temperature that's set. So I want to take my steak off medium rare at 130. I set this to 130. No matter how long it sits in there, it cannot go over 130. It cannot overcook. It will be nice and juicy. And then I can take it out and finish it by searing it in some cast iron just to add a little bit more flavor to it. So that's the principle of it. And if you're wondering when to sous vide and when not to sous vide, honestly, it's a business decision. If you're doing expensive meats like this filet mignon here, I think this was like a $20 cut, and you just don't want to potentially mess it up, sous vide, perfect way to do it. If you have more experience, of course, you could throw it in a hot pan, but you know, it's just easier doing it this way, guys. Come on now, let's just be real. It's easy. Also, FYI, sous vide is great for like doing meal prep and stuff, like take a bunch of chicken breasts, throw them in the bags, put them in there while you get the rest of your stuff done, and then you can just kind of take your time on it. Now for this filet mignon, very simple process that we're going to do. Mine came with, my sous vide came with bags of varying sizes. This one should be big enough for, yeah, this is definitely big enough for the filet mignon, and then this little hand pump here. If you have a food saver, a vacuum sealer, whatever, you can totally use that. I'm just going to use this until I run out of these bags. So first thing we got to do is we got to salt and pepper this bad boy. So yes, I'm going to be fancy with my little electric one, but we want to get a good amount of salt all on this, really. So we've got that. And don't be afraid just to pat any of the excess on it. When I was doing my research, it was kind of, the consensus was if you are sous videing things, you can kind of go a little heavier with your seasoning just because it is going to be cooking in that bag for a really long time. And a lot of people complain about filet mignon saying it doesn't have a lot of flavor, and that's usually just because it's under seasoned. And listen, if you want to, you could do any type of steak seasoning. I have my McCormick's Montreal steak seasoning that will be really good on this. Today I'm just keeping it really simple, but feel free to go crazy. You can even put this in there with the marinade if you want to. It is your steak, you do what you want. And of course, fresh cracked black pepper. I highly encourage using fresh cracked just because it just has a complete different flavor profile than saying using the already coarse ground stuff, because that also could have been sitting around for like 6 months before you bought it. Versus this, you're good to go. So let's give that just a good coating. And listen, it's bouncing off, but we can totally pat it on in there. Also, I could just not be an asshole and change the coarseness of my grinder, but listen, told you the show's full of mistakes and you're going to get all of them. And again, we'll take our steak and just kind of work around, get anything that's excess. You don't have to waste anything. Typically, when people season steaks, they like to let it sit for, 15, 30, sometimes even up to an hour. You don't have to do that. Remember, it's gonna go in a bag. It's gonna be in there for a while. All right, so got our bag there, but what I wanna do real quick, I wanna throw some aromatics into our bag so that way you just kind of pick up some flavors and whatnot. So I've just got some thyme here. and some rosemary. Let me get a good sprig of thyme. So I'm just gonna take 1 sprig of thyme, just pop that in there. And then I also want to take some garlic here. I'm gonna take 3 cloves just because these aren't the biggest ones. All I'm really gonna do is just crush them, get them out their paper. So we'll throw 2 in there first. Because what we're gonna do is get these into this bag here. Then we're gonna get our filet in the bag and try to get it positioned at least on top of the thyme and the garlic. Then we'll take our rosemary, put that on top, kind of get it situated where it's on there. And then just our remaining garlic. And if there's other flavors you want to put in here, by all means, go for it. And there's a lot of different sous vide products out there, food savers and whatnot. So you're going to kind of have to go based off of what you're using. Like I know the people who use the food savers, they'll usually take their bags and turn it out like that. So that way, when they put it into the seal, there's no like seasoning or potential liquids or marinades that would affect the seal. That's something that some people may have to do. I don't have to do that in this case, just because the way this seals up. I'm gonna push out as much air as I can. Ooh, that rosemary smells so damn good. And then this particular one comes with these little clips. Let me see if I can grab it real quick. If you're wondering what brand sous vide this is, I'm using Sous Vide Art. I know a lot of people use the Jewel, but this was gifted to me and it's an amazing gift and I love it. I've gotten to use it a couple times. So this one comes with a clip that can just kind of double, make sure that this seal is really good. And that feels awesome. And then the fun part, I'm gonna flip this over. Yep. Might have lost a piece of garlic, but it's all good. The fun part is this little tiny pump here. Now again, food saver, vacuum seal would be great, but this is what I got. There we go. And we've got our vacuum seal here. Our meat's in there. Garlic's there, thyme's there, rosemary's there. This is good to go. So over to the sous vide. Now with this again, it's set at 130. This is always in my way. Again, it's set at 130 because that's the temperature that I want. If you want it higher, I mean, listen, I just said it's your steak. You do whatever you want. If you want it medium well done. I mean, do what you want, but you paid a lot of money for this filet mignon. At least, you know, eat it at its proper tenderness, which for me is 130. I'm not ready to venture into the world of rare yet, but at some point I might. I've got this filled up. This one has a minimum and a maximum water line, and I'm somewhere in between because I have to consider anytime I'm putting something in the water, displacement. So I'm just gonna pop this in. And I want to get this submerged as possible. I may not even need to clip it, honestly. I might just be able to drop it in. Yeah, see, I don't even need to clip this one. If I was using a bigger bag, I'd clip it because some proteins just instinctively want to float, but this one isn't. So, and listen, this water is 138 degrees, but I can still touch it. This is submerged in the water. Again, I have a max line here, so when I put that in there, I have to consider water displacement, but also I have to think about evaporation because this water is steaming and it's coming up. And when you're doing really long cooks, you have to watch that water line. So you have to kind of find that safe zone of not too much water where it goes above the max line. And again, that's if your device has a max line, but also take in consideration that you may have to put more water in there over time or cover it up. I'm using just this regular little plastic bin thing here, and I've got it on a rack because I just want to make sure I don't mess up these countertops. But I've seen some hacks where people put plastic wrap on top of it. I mean, I do have a lid for this I can partially put on, but having done a few steaks, and this is only going 2 hours and 30 minutes, it's not gonna evaporate that much. But just keep that in mind if you're doing things like porks and stuff like that. You may have to do a couple of different things because there are just many different types of sous vides and sous vide containers and all that mess. So this is just gonna sit there for 2 hours and 30 minutes, and then when it gets done, honestly, all we're gonna have to do is just sear it just to get the color on it, and that color is gonna be also partially flavor. I believe the Maillard reaction is the word I'm looking for that I couldn't think of. And then it'll only take us maybe like 10 minutes to make the béarnaise sauce. So also, by the way, French chefs out there, I am not doing this the authentic traditional way. I'm gonna do it super easy in a blender. So just go ahead and get your screams out now. Hey, for our béarnaise sauce, I've already said all this stuff, so now I gotta say it again because for whatever reason, my microphone was not working. So I've got 3 sprigs of tarragon here, and from those, I have pulled off about 2 tablespoons of tarragon leaves, just the leaves, and I've chopped them up. And again, roughly about 2 tablespoons. I've also got a shallot here that I've just kind of thinly sliced because this shallot and this tarragon are gonna go into a white wine vinegar reduction. So it doesn't really matter if they're chopped up or not. We're just trying to get the flavor infused in there. But this tarragon is 2 tablespoons I'm gonna use later on to put at the very end in our blender to kind of just give an extra little tarragon flavor to it, and as well as some color. And then I have got here, as I poured when I found out that my microphone was not working, this is, excuse me, 1/4 cup of some white wine vinegar. You could use white vinegar, but I feel like it has a little bit too much bite, so I'm gonna say white vinegar. Sorry, I'm gonna say white wine vinegar. And then I've also just got a regular Sauvignon Blanc. You want a dry white wine here. I think Sauvignon is the best one to go with. And we're gonna also do a 1/4 cup. So that's 1/4 cup of white wine vinegar, 1/4 cup of Sauvignon Blanc. And then I also just have some clarified butter here that I made myself. Now, you don't have to make this, you can buy it. And if you wanna know how to make it, it's really easy. You just melt some butter. I melted the butter in a larger measuring cup. And then what happens is the milk solids will fall to the bottom. I'm just gonna get this off now. What happens is the milk solids fall to the bottom, and then all you do is you just ladle off the clarified butter from the top. But if you don't feel like doing any of that, you can also just buy it already clarified. I just figured I had all this butter, might as well use it. So these are my ingredients. So let's move over here to the induction top, and we're gonna put this, the beginnings of the sauce together. All right, I've got a saucepan here, and I'm gonna just turn it on to, let's for right now say a medium-high heat. This is just to get this white wine vinegar and this white wine to somewhat of a boil. Because we're gonna reduce all this liquid to like down to 1 to possibly 2 or 3 tablespoons. So we need to at least get it boiling first, and then we'll simmer it the rest of the way. All right, now that this has come up to a boil, what we're gonna do is just throw our shallots in there, our sprigs of tarragon, and then about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoons of freshly cracked black pepper. You can also use just whole peppercorns here, but I've got them in my pepper joint right here, so I'm gonna say that's what it is. I'm gonna say it's about 1/4 of a teaspoon. And then I'm gonna go a full teaspoon of salt here. And I think that's good there. And now that this is up to a boil, what I wanna do is just bring it down to where it's just simmering. Because again, we want this to reduce. Keep your eye on this because it can go quickly from this to nothing very fast. So again, we're looking for 1 to 2 tablespoons of liquid left after this reduces. So we'll be right back when it gets there. All right, so our liquid has reduced down pretty good. Again, 1 to 3 tablespoons max. And I know my induction top's gonna turn off, but like if I just dip it to the side here and just take my spoon, I know I've got, if I can show you guys all, well, oh, let me do it this way. If I take my spoon, I know I've got 1 there, and I've probably got 2 here, so this is good. So what I wanna do now is I'm gonna get this off the heat, and I wanna let this cool down. And what I'm gonna do real quick is, I've got me just a small little measuring cup right there. I've got me a strainer here, and I just wanna strain this liquid. It's not a lot, but it's very, very important. So I'm gonna strain that liquid into our measuring cup, and then a little tiny spatula, but this is all I got right now. I wanna press as much liquid as I can out of what's left in these onions, these shallots and this tarragon, because that's the really good stuff. The whole purpose of this was concentrating these flavors, so I don't want to lose out too much on it. All right, so now that we have this, we'll still let it cool down because it's still pretty damn hot. Yeah, I can feel it already transferring through this. So let it cool down for maybe like another 5 minutes. Then we're gonna move to the blender and finish our béarnaise sauce. Oh, by the way, Sauvignon Blanc is my poor choice because it's in the sauce, it's in my sauce. Okay, we've got everything laid out that we need here. I have got 3 egg yolks, just egg yolks, discard the whites, just 3 of those. We've got our white wine vinegar reduction sauce right here. I've also got some clarified butter that I made earlier, and this is warmed up. I made it way in advance, but we do need to warm it up some. And then I've got our 2 tablespoons of tarragon leaves, just the leaves, not the stems, that I chopped up. And I had like a tablespoon of shallots that I just decided to throw in there because I didn't want to go to waste. But again, totally optional, you don't have to do that. None of this is traditional, but it's gonna taste good. So what we're gonna do is take our egg yolks, pour them into our blender. And the traditional way of doing this is like double boiling, all this other stuff like that. And I don't want to make your life harder than it already is. So we're not going to do that. Our liquid from earlier, gonna pop that in, as well as a sip of wine, because that's really important. Got a teaspoon of kosher salt. By the way, as I pour this in, earlier when I was salting the steak, I just want to point out I was using kosher salt, even though it was coming out of a shaker. And the reason for that is because if you were to use something like table salt, which is like very, very fine, you're not gonna have a good idea of how much salt you're actually putting on your steak because it dissolves almost immediately into the meat. So having those bigger crystals helps you have a better understanding of just how much salt you're using. So for those of you at home who are getting ready to break out the Morton's fine table salt, no, go with kosher. So I've got our lid on, and at my lowest setting, just gonna get it going. We're gonna do that fun process of emulsification, which this is like what makes not just béarnaise sauce hard, but like hollandaise, because you don't want your sauce to break, you don't want to scramble your eggs, you don't want to undercook it. It's so many variables to it. 30 seconds in, I think we're good. So let's start streaming in our warm clarified butter. So I want to stream just a little bit at first, then I want to do a little bit more. Again, I want to kind of temper this because I'm adding a hot liquid into eggs essentially. So I want to make sure that I'm not putting too much hot liquid in there to where it gets to the point where it starts scrambling. Because then I'm going to have to delete this entire section and pretend that I was never going to make a béarnaise sauce and use A1 sauce or Heinz 57, which I actually like Heinz 57. So that's looking and feeling good. Add a little bit more of that clarified butter, and I'm just drizzling this in, all right? And I think I can go ahead and pour the rest of this butter in now. And now I want to add in just our shallot and tarragon, and this is just going to be for like 30 seconds. You hear that sound change, right? And then all I'm gonna do at this point is just increase the speed just a little bit. So I have this at a 1. I'm gonna go up to a 2. Then I'm gonna turn it off because what I wanna do right now is just actually taste it, check it for thickness, check it for all the things that I want my sauce to be for my steak. Oh, this seems, oh, this is actually, I think this is perfect. Like, that's good. I mean, that's like the thickness I'm looking for. And if it's a little bit too thick, you can always just put like a little splash of water here and there, or a little splash of white wine if you want to. But we gotta taste it because it may need more salt. It does not need any more salt. That is good. Wow. So I want to give everybody just the typical food safety warning. Raw eggs, you know, all that whole thing. Oh, that's good. Man, that's really, really good. I'm gonna put this to the side, and now it is time to sear our filet mignon, which is already done, and this is the fun part. Béarnaise sauce is done. Let's get our filet mignon out. Now, you never sous vide before. Let me just tell you right now, the meat's not gonna look sexy, but I just wanna show you how it's going to look before we get ready to sear it, because that's all it really needs, just a good searing. So I've opened up the bag. Oh man, it smells amazing. Let me get the garlic off. Yeah, that smells awesome. I don't know if this can be seen. Hopefully I'll zoom in on it, but it's all gray. It's not sexy. You can eat it now though. It's technically done, but we can add more flavor to it. So I'm just checking to make sure there's nothing extra on it that doesn't need to be there, that will burn in the pan, and it does not look like to be the case. Our garlic and our thyme and rosemary is still in that bag. So I got some cast iron here. I'm looking for between 450 and 500 degrees. I don't want to go any hotter than that just because honestly I just don't want to create smoke in my house and set off the fire alarm and also make my dogs go crazy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some avocado oil because that's a high smoke point, and I am going to coat our cast iron just enough in case there's crevices, which actually this has crevices. I want the oil to be able to get everywhere, and also I just don't have that much avocado oil left, so I'm gonna use that. Some people go very, very limited on it, but I'm fine with just at least making sure the bottom of this cast iron is coated. And now what I'm gonna do is just get our pan on, and I'm gonna, again, aiming between 450 and 500 degrees. So we're gonna take filet mignon, and we're just gonna place it in. And that sear is a good sign. And honestly, I'm gonna go ahead and just set a timer for 1 minute. We're gonna start out with 1 minute on this first side. We're gonna flip it over to the other one, let that go for a minute, and then once that minute is up, I'm gonna throw in our butter and our flavoring agents, which is just more thyme, rosemary, and garlic. We'll let that go for another minute, then we'll flip it over. And well, also let me just not miss the most important part of this entire process, basting with the butter. So once that butter melts, we're gonna baste one side, flip it over, baste the other side, and then it's done. Finito. So I'm not even gonna cut because this is gonna go very, very quickly. And this is just unsalted butter. I'm always trying to use unsalted butter because I wanna be able to control the salt levels. Time is up. That was already 1 minute. I'm gonna flip it over. Oh yeah, that's great. And we're gonna set the timer for 1 more minute. Plenty of time for me to drink this. And I don't have a full stick of butter here. It's about 7 tablespoons of butter. All right, so what we're gonna do here is throw our butter in. We're gonna throw our thyme in, our rosemary, and our garlic. I'm also gonna turn the heat down because I don't wanna burn our butter. So now let me turn this. And the way typically you do this is you pull the steak up here, you tilt that, and you baste. But because I'm on an induction top, the second this leaves full contact with the surface, it tends to turn off. So I have to be kind of careful as to how I do it. But I'm basting. I'm gonna baste for 30 more seconds. Make sure we get that garlic, that rosemary, all that down there. Now we finished, we took this out the sous vide at 130, and this searing process should only take it up to 135 because we're just doing this in 1 minute increments. So you don't want to go too long, otherwise you're going to get outside of your temperature zone. And again, I was going for a medium rare because that's where filet mignon really shines. All right, cool. Let's flip it one more time, just to the other side so we can baste. Look at that sear, that is a great sear. I hope I didn't move this out of the camera shot. And same thing, tilt it, get a good base. We want this bad boy buttery. And then the cool thing about sous vide, sorry, that needs 30 more seconds. Cool thing about sous vide is like the way it cooks the steak. Normally you would have to let a steak cook, or you would have to let a steak kind of rest for 10 to 15 minutes. You don't have to do that with this. We can literally take it out of this pan and serve it immediately. All right, it is time for the moment of truth. Let's see what we got going on here. I'm gonna do this side since it's got the least amount of sauce on it. Oh, that shit's tender though. I mean, listen, if there's any question about the cooked perfection, this is exactly what I wanted, medium rare, right there. I'm gonna eat it, I'm not gonna be snobby. Right with the tongs. God damn.
Sauce in your beard.
I don't even care. I want to keep the sauce in my beard, honestly, so I can either save it for later. I mean, I don't know if you can see this, but just because of the way the lighting is right now, but like, this is cooked perfectly all the way through, edge to edge. The sear didn't do too much, other than this create an amazing crust on the outside. This shit's phenomenal. That's been Poor Choices Kitchen. That is really good. Holy shit. Hey, we have a Patreon link. It's down in the description. $1 a month is always asked for. It definitely helps support the channel, especially here in these inflated times. And I mean, wow, I don't know what else to say. That's just so savory. All right, steak's getting cold. I gotta eat it. So we'll see y'all here next week. Peace.